Hey guys, we're going to talk about arrays in this video. First, we're going to review normal variables and kind of how we've been doing things thus far, and how we can use this new thing called arrays to make things a little bit easier on us with regards to storing data, especially related data. So right now when we make a variable, we've got those four main types that we talked about: int, char, double, float. I think that was four. We would just give the type of the variable that we'd like to create or declare, and then the name of the variable. So a lot of times I see you guys doing var1, so I'll just try and stick to that. So I just declared a single variable. Now, in this first assignment, we had something that would take, or it was required that we had 10 user inputs. So let's just go with a smaller example. Let's do 4 user inputs. So you would have to do something like this, where you declared 4 different variables, right? And when you went to store user input into these variables, you'd use your prompt and your scanf, right? And that's, pretty straightforward, works out. So let's make a counter. We'll make it I, and we'll use a for loop to store 4 different user inputs into 4 different variables. So just going over for loops again, we initialize the counter to 0. As long as our counter is less than 4, then we'd like to run this loop, add 1 to I, which this is what this does, after each iteration. So after this loop runs 4 times, right? So we know we want to store user input 4 different times, but how do we know where to store it? Well, we can use the counter to differentiate where it's being stored. So I can use an if statement or a switch. So I think ifs we all understand pretty quickly. Switches, I'm sure the same way, but let's just go over the ifs. So if the loop is on the 0th iteration of the is on its 0th iteration, then we want to store the user input into var1. Else if it's not 0, then it's 1, then we want to store it into var2. So don't forget your code blocks after each of these things. And if you use an else if, you need a condition. We'll store into var2. I'm going to copy this because we're going to do it a couple more times here. I equals 2. We're going to put it into var3. And if I equals 3, that's the last possible value for I. So we can just leave it as else. So if you just use else, you do not need this condition here. You do not need else I equals 3. If you're going to do that, you need to put the if keyword there as well. But if you're just saying, if it's none of the ones above, you could just say else and then open your code block, okay? And this will go into var4. So instead of putting the prompt inside of each of these if-else-ifs code blocks, we can do it at the beginning because it gets repeated each time, right? So I can put the prompt up here. Enter in an integer. And let's say I want to know what iteration we're on. So I can put %d there as the placeholder and print out the value of I. Okay, so the way this kind of works is when it first enters in I equals 0, it's going to ask the user to enter in something, and then based off of what the value of I is, we're going to either get into here, 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 or here. And at that point we want to do the scanf. So let's do that. We're going to take in an integer and we're going to store it, don't forget your ampersand, into var1 here. So now we can take that, copy it, paste it here, change it to var2, var3, and var4. Now at the end of each loop, we can print out the value that they entered. So printf, you entered, and then %d, give it a new line, and we can put in, so maybe it needs to be inside the loop as well, right? Because it doesn't know which one is which, and the if else takes care of that. So I can do it here. But you'll see with arrays, we'll actually be able to do it at the end, which is really nice. var3, var4. I'm going to save that and run it. So enter in integer, we're on the 0th iteration. Do 7, 4 for the first iteration 2, iteration 3, put in 2, the 4th iteration, 10. Okay, so that's how we've been doing things thus far with regards to storing user input or related data. And we have to use multiple variables. Well, now we're introducing something like arrays here. So let me pull up a slide real quick. Whoops, sorry. So I know this is kind of offset. Let me just go ahead and fix it. Okay. So when we declare variables, in the computer memory, it kind of just puts it wherever it can in the allotted memory slots that are available to the program. With arrays, it would actually be contiguous. They would be right after each other. So when we declare variables, this is what it normally looks like. But when we declare arrays, this is what it would look like. You'd get the type, the name, and then in square brackets, not the curly ones or the parentheses, but in square brackets, you tell how many elements will be in this array. So you can almost think of this like an ice cube tray with 3 slots in it. So I guess if you guys like Jello shots, you can have individual Jello cups, or you can use an ice cube tray and make a bunch of Jello shots in one go in a nice array. So anyway, hopefully that's not inappropriate. But let's go ahead and do that here. So let's make an array. So you need the type, and we're going to store an array of ints. So we're going to store many related ints next to each other. So let's call it var, and we'll say it has 4 elements. And there we go. We've declared that array. So the next question is, how do we access array elements? Well, to kind of go with the methods of madness of my for loop, starting at 0 instead of 1, to access the very first element of the ice cube tray that is this array is actually 0. So if you want to access the first element of the var array, use the index starts at 0. So the index is what's going to be in here when we go to access it. So let's say we want to set the value of the very first element, which is the first index of the var array, that's the name of the array, to 7. So we would say the name of the array, var, we'll open and close the brackets, and we'll say the very first one starts at 0. Okay? And then just like a normal variable, we use the assignment operator. And then did I say 7? Hopefully I did. So we set the 0th index of the array to 7. And this is the first index. So the very first element. So if you remember the tray here, it would be this slot, the very first one. Okay? Alright, so now let's do the second element. that would be denoted by a 1. Let's say that's a 5. And the third element, but the index 2 would be, let's just say 4. And for the final element, we'll say 10. So this is the second element, but index 1. So notice that it just starts at 0, and there's still 4 elements, right? So the minimum value would be 0 in here, and the final one would be 3. So that kind of matches up pretty nicely with this for loop, right? So in class, I've always gave an example, and in the videos, I would start at 0. So this is kind of why we do this, or we've been doing this, so I'd prep you guys to kind of get used to this approach. So now when we can access arrays in a nice fashion using for loops. So I'm just going to push this down, and then let's say I want to print out all the values of our var array. So print out all elements of var array. We can use the for loop. We have the counter I. We're going to start it at 0 because our index starts at 0 with arrays. And as long as I is less than 4, that means the values of I will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's 4 different elements, but the index range is 0 to 3. So we'll do I++, excuse me, and give it the block here. So if I want to print out each value of the array, printf is probably pretty obvious. The placeholder, well, the type of the array is int, and I'll just give a new line here. And we want to print the actual element. So think about that for a second. We used to just say like var1 here, right? Instead, how do we access the elements of the array? Well, it's just like the way we set them. You give the square brackets and give the actual index that you want to print out. Well, we want to print out all of them. So what can we put in here that will change from 0 through 3? Well, the I counter, of course. So if we can just put I right here, each time I changes, it'll loop over, right? But it'll print whatever index the current I value is. So it starts out at 0, so var 0 should be printed out first. And then it'll loop. I++, I is now 1. So then it should print the second element. So it should print out 7, 5, 4, 10, all on new lines. So let's give that a try. Give that a run. And there it is, 7, 5, 4, 10. So let's get a little bit more information from our output. Let's put another placeholder here. I'm going to put it in parentheses. This tells us which element we're on. So I want to print out the value of I here. So now we'll know which element. So I can even type the word element here, right? And do it that way. So element 0 through 3, right? And then it'll give me the value. So let's say we want to add up all the elements together. How can we do that? Well, we can use a normal variable, call it sum or something, and we can store the sum of all these variables together. Now you're probably thinking, well, we can write something like so. So let me create another variable, call it sum, and initialize it to 0. Okay? You're probably thinking something like this: var 0 plus var 1 plus var 2 plus var 3. Now, what's the difference between doing this and just putting in var 1 in here instead? So that's not convenient, right? That's not something that's we're totally leveraging our new data structure, which is the array. Well, in this for loop, well, doesn't this look like it's looping, right? Take this one, set it to sum or whatever, and then take this one, add it to what sum is, take this one, add it to what sum is, take this one, add it to what sum is. So if we initialize sum to 0, what we can do on each one here is inside the for loop, we can say take sum. We're going to take the current value of sum and add each element each time, right? So let's just kind of walk through this. When the for loop first starts, sum is 0 still, right? And I is 0. So if sum is 0, because of up here, and var I is 7, we'll say 0 plus 7. That gives us 7. That gets stored in the sum. And then let's print it out here. We'll say current sum, and then %d, and we'll print out sum. And let's put some dashes in there or something. Or no, we'll do tabs. Okay, so by the end of this loop, this sum should be equivalent to this sum. So let's give that a try, actually. Let's compute both of them. So printf %d, or sum is %d new line. We'll print out the value of sum. And then since I'm changing the value of sum here, I have to reset the value of sum to 0. Or else it'll just keep adding to whatever the sum of all these numbers are, right, down here. So we need to reset it. And then so what I'll do is I'll print sum at the end again here. Okay, let's give that a try. Okay, let's talk about this. 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus 10 is 26. So when I get to here, it computes the sum and it prints it out. And that's what we see on this top line here. Then, once it prints that out, it resets sum, and then it enters the for loop. Starts I at 0, as long as I is less than 4, then run the loop, then add 1 to I at the end of each loop. So, since sum is 0, it gets reset here, and the first value is 7, the first value, or the first current sum should be 7. Great. Prints that out, repeats, I is 1 now. So the value of var 1 is 5. And the current sum is 7. 7 plus 5 is 12. And then that gets stored in the sum. And sure enough, 12 is added here. The next one is 4. 4 plus 12 is 16. Great. Then the next one is 10. 10 plus 16 is 26. So once the for loop ends, we now have the sum of all of the elements in the var array, and we print that out, and that shows here. And then this, of course, is the first part of the program. So arrays are pretty powerful. You can group like elements together, or even they can be totally different from each other as well. You just need to remember what you're storing in each of the indices. So think about how you could apply this to your programming assignment 1, because that's basically what you're going to be doing for programming assignment 2, is you're going to recreate your program such that it uses arrays, and then it uses for loops to go through those arrays to access elements and even do computations.